Hello, I'm Brenda and this is You Are Not Alone, the show for news, tips, and stories of hope for those struggling with substance use disorder. My guest today, Philadelphia native Brian Storm, author of The Struggle, shares with us his memoir, to be released March 14th. While reading this book, at times I felt tearful and sad for the struggles Brian faced during his years of active addiction. I then found myself expressing tears of joy for the journey which we know today ends with Brian's recovery. We have so much to discuss, and I'm so excited to introduce my guest, Brian Storm. Brian, welcome to You Are Not Alone.
Thank you for being here. I feel honored to be on here. I appreciate it.
I am so happy that you're here with us. Well, just without further ado, I just wanted to show everybody your book, The Struggle. And I guess we can start off by asking, what motivated you to write this, and who is the audience that you're hoping will read your book?
Well, I originally wrote this book 10 years ago. This is actually called The Struggle 10 years later. Because when I wrote the original one, I just wanted to help other addicts. I wanted my story to go out there just so people can relate and get some hope that they can also get clean and sober. Mm-hmm. But I noticed a lot of non-addicts were reading it too. So when I rewrote this book, I kept that in mind, and I tried to write it in a way where even people who have never done drugs in their life would understand what goes through an addict's mind when they do it. So that it can offer hope not just for addicts, but for people who have loved ones as addicts who may want their loved ones to get clean and sober one day.
That's, that was a big takeaway for me. As you know, I lost my son Nicholas 5 years ago to overdose.
Yes.
And I felt like you were very concise and precise and very illustrative of your struggles and what the disease does to the brain. And I say disease very emphatically because it is a disease that hijacks the brain and is very, cunning and demonic and just takes over all of the senses of one's desire to get clean, right? How many times?
It does. It's like that movie Groundhog Day, you try so many different ways to do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you still end up in the same boat, I tried to get clean. I tried getting a girlfriend who didn't do drugs. I tried to run away to the military. I tried to, switch one drug with the other. I tried to just drink. None of it worked. I always ended up going back to the same routine.
Well, let's back up a little bit because, again, another takeaway is that this disease does not discriminate. So tell us a little bit about your childhood and, coming up, your parents, your family. What was that like?
Like I said in the book, I grew up kind of in a normal family, as normal as they come, I guess.
Right.
Sure. Like my parents, they weren't divorced. I didn't lose a parent at a young age. I was never sexually abused or anything like that. Like my family was kind of normal, but it didn't matter. I still became an addict.
Your dad was a cop.
My dad was a cop.
Well, that really adds to the mix.
Yeah, my dad was a cop. I turned out to be a drug dealer, so you can imagine how that worked out,
How did that work out? It didn't work out.
It didn't work out. No, not at all.
No. And you had siblings?
I did, yes. My older brother Sean he actually became an addict too. But I had an older brother Mike who was not an addict. He likes to drink a little bit, but he's normal. My sister, same thing. She likes to drink a little bit, but she's normal.
Right. So here you have 4 children under the same roof.
Exactly.
Dad's a cop.
Yep.
And mom, for the most part, when you were younger, was stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And pretty northeast. You lived in northeast
Philly, regular row home
neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the best neighborhood, but it definitely wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was just like we'll define normal.
Yeah,
right. What do you think led into this addiction? Like a lot of kids will experiment. It usually starts out with the typical, alcohol and weed, right? Yes. And then tell us what happened from there.
Well, I think it's really the people you hang with sometimes, like everyone around me was smoking weed. Everyone around me was drinking. And then before I know it, some of the people around me were popping pills. So it's only natural that I started popping pills too, And then when people around me started popping harder pills, I started popping harder pills. They started doing coke, I started doing coke. So it really is a game of like follow the leader sometimes,
Influenced by your peers.
Exactly. If I would have pulled back a little bit and not hang with those people, my life might have went through a different route, or it might not have. I mean, no one really knows for sure.
No, we don't. We'll never know. But you mentioned the book that you were bullied. Tell us about that.
Yes.
Why were you bullied?
I mean, because when I was in grade school, I probably weighed about 40 pounds. I was like a skinny little toothpick of a kid. Yeah, I wore glasses. I had a speech impediment. So kids just made fun of it. They were just busting my chops. That's what kids do sometimes. But I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to stick up for myself.
Right.
I had the older brothers. I thought they were going to fight all these kids for me. So I was like, I'll get my older brothers after you. That was always my go-to thing.
Right.
I could never stand up for myself.
Right.
Which really... So it was really like I had low self-esteem, but that's what I loved drinking and smoking weed so much, because when I drank, I felt like a different person. All of a sudden, I could stand up for myself. All of a sudden, I felt cool. I could walk right up to a girl and talk to her. I can get on the dance floor and dance. I couldn't do that when I was sober, If I was sober, I did not like who I was. I had all these internal feelings that I just couldn't get out.
Right.
But when I drank, they all came out.
Right.
So
you became, a different person.
Exactly.
Mind alteration, of course, and made a big difference in your demeanor.
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you think it is that, you got into the alcohol and the weed, and then it was popping the pills. How did that all come to be that you could afford all that? What were you doing?
Well, selling drugs.
Okay.
I mean, it started out when I first started doing drugs. Obviously didn't sell them yet, but I had a paper route. So back then, I don't know how it is now, but back then, like, you knock on the door, like, "Hi, I'm collecting for the Daily News," and they had to pay you $3 and give me a $1 tip or whatever. So I knocked on a couple of doors. It'd be like a Wednesday afternoon after school. I'm knocking on people's doors to collect them, and they're like, "You don't come here on Wednesdays." But that's how I got my money to get a bag of weed here and there, But then eventually I realized, I can sell some weed and make enough money to smoke and stuff. So, yeah.
And which led to incarcerations, which
later on down the line. Yes,
later on.
Yeah.
And so you're selling drugs to support your own habit. You get arrested, and you stay. Initially, you were in jail, or do you get bailed out?
Well, but by the time I was getting locked up for selling drugs, this is when I was like full-blown heroin addict. So the first time I got locked up for that, they let me out the next day on ROR, released on your own recognizance. So basically, I didn't have to pay bail or anything.
Right.
So, of course, I went right back to selling drugs and getting high and stuff again. But it took about 4 times before my bail was so high that no one wanted to pay it. It was like I had to pay $750 to get out. No one's going to give $750 to a heroin addict, okay? Let's be real.
Right.
And that's what ultimately led to me getting clean, because from there, I had to sit in jail for a month, and from there, they sent me to the rehab.
So it was it was almost like a drug court situation, like you can be released to a rehab through the court system.
Exactly, yes.
Do you think that a system like that should have been in place, or if it were in place sooner, that your path would have turned out differently? What do you think about, not so much, like the justice system failed you. I'm not suggesting that, but I know today it seems like there's more attention on the drug court situation, where, you have a one-time offense. Okay, they let you out. And then you get locked up numerous time after time. I mean, do you think that drug court enforcement sooner in the process could have been beneficial, or maybe not necessarily?
Yes and no.
Okay.
See, it all depends on the addict's state of mind at that time. If they would have sent me to drug court 2 years earlier, I may not have been that bad yet where I felt like I really needed help.
Okay.
You know, I might have got to the rehab, did the rehab for 30 days, and then go and get high again because I thought I wasn't that bad.
Okay.
But at the time of my life, when I got locked up and they sent me to rehab, I was done. I've seen too much. I was like, I can't do it no more. I know I was going to die if I kept doing it. And it was just like that perfect time of life that it happened to me.
So you think maybe it's a timing issue for a lot of people?
Yes, absolutely.
That, along with hitting bottom, maybe it's the lightning bolt, the eureka moment, the lights, a higher power, if you want to call it that, whatever your belief system is. Just because you prayed a lot about this, even through your active addiction for many years, you prayed like, please God, if there is a God, take this from me or help me. And you weren't apparently getting the answers that you were hoping for.
No, and because I learned now that when you pray, you have to work with God. You can't just... see, back then, I thought that God was just going to, like, wave this magic wand and, like, I was going to be... I don't have to drink no more. Like, all my problems go away. But I learned that, okay, I got to pray to my higher power and, and he's going to help me, but I got to help myself, too, at the same time. I got to live the way God wants me to live, not the way I want to live.
It's just not ask and you shall receive.
Exactly.
It's ask and do the work with me. Right. So what is it, do you think, about substance use disorder that makes it so hard to get and stay sober?
Well, so I look at addiction as like your enemy. You basically live, eat, sleep, breathe with your enemy 24 hours a day. This little voice talks to you inside your head. And it's like, oh, you can go out, just go get one bag. You'll be okay. You haven't slept in 3 days. Just go get one. You'll be okay. And this voice talks to you in your own voice. So it's hard to ignore sometimes, and it's just like, it's always there. It's constant. When you're having a craving, it can literally last all day long, every single moment of the day. It's just like, get a bag, get a bag, get a bag, get a bag, get a bag. And it's like nonstop.
So it takes over, again, as I mentioned earlier. It's just, my biggest takeaway from this is to hopefully help people to understand just how difficult mentally that this disease is.
Yes.
To get over, not even get over, but to manage, because you never get over it, do you? Ever get past it? Can you ever say, oh, I'm sober, I'm in recovery, but do you ever feel like you could be vulnerable at times?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I continue to go to meetings today.
Okay.
Because I know that I'm just one bad decision away from being right back to where I was, and that's the scary part. Like, even after all these years of being clean and sober, I can make one bad decision and be right back there, and it scares the crap out of me. It really does. Right.
So, like you said, you have to stay on top of it. You have to maintain the sobriety. It's every day.
Yes.
Every day of mindfulness and meetings and your support system being there to help you. Because I know there was this couple segments in your book that I read. And it's like, no, don't do it. Like, you were going to get off the train at one stop. I can't remember.
It's Somerset Station in Philadelphia.
Right. You were in recovery, and you had to go. Where did you have to go? You had to go somewhere to get something.
I think I had to go see my probation officer.
Right.
Yeah. And then I found out I had HIV.
Okay.
Like, right after probation, I decided to go one of those little clinics. They test you in like 10 minutes, and I found out I had HIV, and I was 3 months clean and sober at the time. And I just thought, like, what's the point of even staying sober now? Like, why? I'm just going to die anyway. Because I didn't know anything about HIV back then. Yeah, I didn't know.
Right.
So I had to come back to the rehab, and I passed by Somerset Station, which is like, it's like junkie central. You know what I mean? Like, every addict and their mother, that's where they flock to,
Right.
And I almost got off. I was this close. The doors open. I walked, and I just stopped myself. I heard I heard a voice. It wasn't my voice that time, though. It wasn't the addiction voice. I don't know. Maybe my higher power's voice. I don't know. But it was like, just pray. And that's what I did. I prayed, and
You got down on your knees, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Right there
and
on
everyone
the
looked at me like, it's in Philly on the subway
Right,
train, though. So
everything happens
I
in
probably didn't
Philly.
look that out of place. But
Oh gosh. Well, that's the power of the higher power, but also the power of the substance.
yes.
Right? That takes you to those places. So what was it like to finally make that decision? I'm going to get clean. Obviously, the court system made it for you because you withdrew and you detoxed in jail.
Yes
right?
and no. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say they made it for me. They gave me the option because when I got out of jail and got the rehab, I could have left. They didn't lock the doors at the rehab. So I still had a choice.
Right.
But I knew what the consequences were going to be.
Right. And tell us a little bit about that scenario then, like your financial state, your like what was going on, all the other things that, people normally have in their lives that they have to deal with. They got to pay bills, they got to have, take care of a car, they got to feed themselves while you were in a recovery house, but you got to pay rent. I mean, what was that like coming out of, drug court to the court, and going out of jail into the rehab, and what did you have?
I had nothing. When I got to rehab, I didn't even have sneakers on. Like I had like the jailhouse slippers that they give you, right? And that's all I had. That's the only thing I owned was the clothes on me, And,
No ID?
No, I had ID. I did have ID, yeah. But it was rough. That first year was rough.
Tell us about it.
From the rehab, they moved me up to the transitional living, which is basically I had to pay rent and, I had to get a job and stuff like that. So I was collecting unemployment for like the first month or something like that. And then I got a job, but I was this close to getting kicked out because they were like, well, you're 2 weeks late on your rent. You have to pay this rent. I didn't have a job at the time yet, but like I was like looking all over. Finally, I got a job, right?
Tell us about that.
And then
that was really, that was a lot too. Tell us about that job.
Yeah, that job, it was like, oh my God. I had to travel about an hour and a half away on bus, even though by car it would take like 15 minutes. But it was an hour and a half on bus because it was in Ben Salem, right? And I had, it was only part-time. And then the treatment court was making me go to IOP, thank you. Yeah. Couldn't think of it for a minute. I had to go to IOP, but then because I had a job, I had to pay for it out of pocket because the welfare insurance wasn't going to pay. So I had to pay I think it was like most of my paycheck. I don't remember exact amounts, but most of my paycheck went towards the IOP. The rest of it went towards the TransPass so I can get to the IOP. And I could only work like part-time because of that. And then, and I had there were times I didn't even have money to eat. Thank God the rehab fed us, so I was able to eat breakfast and dinner there, but I wasn't home because I had to go to IOP and all this stuff. So there were times
you didn't have a meal.
I didn't even have lunch to eat. You know what I mean?
And then your wages were garnished.
Yeah.
On top of that,
thank you. I forgot about that.
I like people to understand. So compounding, the IOP and the transportation and the hour and a half to get here and there. Talk about your wages being garnished.
I forgot about that. That was the reason why I didn't have any, because half my wages were being garnished because I took out school loans like 10 years prior to that. So once I popped up on the radar, they were like, "Hey, we want our money." I couldn't even be mad at them. I didn't pay them. So
no, they hit up your paycheck.
Yeah.
So here you are with another deficit going forward. You're trying so hard to get sober, stay sober, and then. You're in a world with the rest of society, a world where we've all been living, and you're kind of thrown into it, and you really, had a lot going against you.
And you know what that little voice was telling me? Just go and sell a couple bags of dope. You can go make $100 in 10 minutes.
I said, no, don't do that. I read that. I'm like, no, don't go do that, Brian.
Well, that's the point I was trying to get in, because recovery and life in general, it really is a roller coaster.
Yes, it is.
You're gonna have them up moments. You're gonna have them down moments.
Yep.
That was one of them down moments for me. But I let go of that wheel because you can't drive a roller coaster, But we try to. But I let go of the wheel and,
Good point.
Came up on top.
You can't control a roller coaster.
Nope.
Exactly. Well, that's interesting. So once you were into the recovery house, How long did it take you to really get grounded and focused and kind of like moving in a positive direction? I don't know if I could say debt-free, but in a place where you could kind of feel like you were a part of society the way that society typically operates.
I know what you mean. Like, I would say probably a good 2 years, you know, because that first 2 years I was living at the rehab in the transitional living. You know, I had that part-time job for a year, and then the rehab actually offered me a position there, which I'm so glad. I'm so glad I took that job because. Man, that boosted my recovery so much.
Well, like, tell us about it.
They wanted me to take care of this vegetable garden, and I never grew vegetables in my life. I was like, what? Like, why are you offering me this? But they were like, we'll teach you. Don't worry about it. So I did, and you know what? It brought me so close to my higher power because I planted these seeds in this garden and watched them grow. And then I watched that food being taken inside and fed to the clients that are just starting their journey. And it was like full circle, man. Like it was so beautiful.
That's
and
great. That's wonderful. I doubt they would have ever kicked you out.
No. I could have.
Typically, recovery houses won't, unless you're just really a slacker. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Because when you said that, I'm going to get thrown out, I'm like, no, you won't, because you're doing all good. You're doing all good stuff. But yeah, I mean, you know, you had these responsibilities, and what was nice about that is you didn't have to get on the bus, right? You didn't have a car, so you could stay at the house and close by, and I guess then that gave you an opportunity to save money and get out from under your debt.
It did, because when I got that new job, the government didn't know yet, so they couldn't garnish my wages, first off. Plus the job paid more. Plus the job, it was full time. And, you know, so what I did was I contacted the government and told them, listen, don't garnish my wages, please. I'll pay you whatever, $20 a week or something, please. And they were like, cool, okay, let's do that. So I got on a payment plan with them. So that helped out tremendously. And then I was able to actually like save some money. You know, I ended up getting a car. I ended up getting, I don't want to say apartment. It was like I was renting a condo with 2 other people. So, you know, I was actually like on my feet and like feeling like a part of society.
Right. Which must have been great.
It was.
For the first time, right? But comes, you know, with responsibilities, which for somebody with, you know, active addiction for so long, that's like culture shock. Right? Because you weren't really part of mainstream society for so long. So, you know, with the help of your recovery house and your community and, you know, your brothers there, your sponsors, that's the community of recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That everybody needs to understand. Do you think 28 days inpatient is enough? Do you think it's enough?
For me, it was, but that's because I also spent a month in jail before that too. So,
okay.
Listen,
so kind of like inpatient, right?
Yeah, a little hardcore inpatient.
Okay.
But I've seen it work for plenty of people. Yes, 28 days is enough. I think sometimes I've seen people who did 0 days inpatient and still got clean and sober, you know? So sometimes it depends on the individual and how bad they really want it. Because if you really want it, all you gotta do is listen to other people, take advice, you know, and it's gonna happen. But
and maybe hit bottom.
Yeah.
Maybe for some people they need the sledgehammer effect.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, they need
but
that.
if you spend longer than 28 days in inpatient, I think it's better, you know. If you can spend, if you have the option to spend longer, absolutely take it.
Absolutely. That's great. So talk about life now. So, you know, it took you the 2 years to really feel planted. In, you know, in society and moving forward. You get a car and you're in a place with a couple other people. So take us from there.
Well, I met a wonderful woman. Her name is Monica. You know, she introduced me to a passion I have, rescuing animals. Because she rescued animals, so that pretty much means I had to rescue animals. So
you're going to be with Monica. You better love animals.
Exactly. And, you know, I love it. We foster these little kittens all the time, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's a great life. And like, you know, I moved to South Philly. I got a car. We got a house now. I got a job at the library.
Tell us about that. Interesting.
my whole life, I didn't even like really read books like that. Like honestly, up until a year ago, I didn't really read books. I'll write them, but I don't read them. Right?
Okay.
But, and it was a big transition working from a rehab with all men to a library with little kids.
Okay.
I had to watch my mouth because I like to curse a lot, right? So I had to watch my mouth, and I had to watch not just the cursing, just what the stuff I would talk about, and it's weird. Like I went from like selling dope in the middle of North Philly to helping kids with homework sometimes. I teach kids how to play chess now every week.
Wow.
Wow. Like
that's great.
If that's not a 180, I don't know what is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So life is good.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Life is good. Well, there's one more thing, and it's something I found out just recently, is that you wrote another book.
I did.
And I found this very interesting. The Monkey on My Brother's Back. And tell us about this. Tell us about this book.
It started out as a joke.
Okay.
I just kind of drew the cover because I thought it'd be like funny. The monkey on my brother's back. Because for those who don't know, the monkey on my back is like a term used for addiction, right? So, but then I decided, you know what? I'm going to turn this into an actual book, and I wrote it for kids that may have a loved one, or maybe like a parent or a brother or something who is going through addiction, and they may not fully understand at that age.
Right.
So if you use the metaphor of a monkey, an actual monkey on their back, maybe they can understand it a little more. And and it also teaches kids to listen to your parents, because in the story, the kid's brother doesn't listen to his parents, and that's how he gets the monkey on his back.
Right. Well, that's wonderful, and I think this is a great tool for parents and for families to have, to try and explain it in simple terms for young children. And you also illustrated it. You did a great job.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you, Brian.
Thank you.
I am so proud of you. And, where you've been and where you've come so far is amazing. And it just proves that recovery is possible. And I am just so excited that you were able to spend part of your birthday, happy birthday, with us. And I wish you all the success with this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. I'm Brenda Shavito. And remember, you are not alone. If you or a loved one needs help or would like to donate, please visit us anytime at angelsagainstaddiction.org. I'm also urging that everyone gets trained in how to use Narcan. I believe that together we can help save lives.